Annyeonghaseyo. Good evening and welcome to another episode of Tell Me About It, TMAI with me, ACK. You're welcome to this episode, the 33rd episode of TMAIA. Basically, what we do here is telling you about things you're curious about, things I'm curious about, things we are both curious about. And then you can find us on YouTube and then Facebook at PenyGh. You can also find us on our website, radio.penygh.com. We are also on Instagram, Discord, and other social media platforms. All you need to do is search for PenyGh. I am your host, ACK. So for today, if you're listening to us using the website, you probably do not know what the topic is about. But if you're using the Facebook or the YouTube, you know what we are going to talk about. Without much ado, let me just introduce the topic. We are going to talk about something that is very dear to my heart. Something that I'm mostly interested in. It's none other than ways to learn a new language. It's something we find common here in Ghana, not necessarily learning international languages, but you find interest in learning your other local languages. For instance, a Ghan person would want to learn Chi, or usually an Ewa person would want to learn another language, Ghan, Chi, whatever it is. And then the Chi or the Akan person would also want to learn the Ewe. With local languages, Ewe is a language I'm quite interested in learning. But then what are some of the ways you can use to learn a new language? With me, should I say, yeah, if you've listened to this show at least 1 or 2 episodes, you'd notice that I am quite the language learner. I'm not an expert. That's why I'm not talking from my brain. I'm going to use an article as we usually do. And today we are going to use an article from goabroad.com. That is the article we are using, and we are going to find out some of the ways to learn a new language. However, I would either agree to some of the points, disagree to them as someone who has been learning the Korean language and the Spanish, Espanol, for years. Okay, without much ado, let's get into it. Why am I talking this way? Anyway. Okay, so here it goes. Oh, we get it. Learning a new language is challenging, frustrating, and sometimes just downright difficult. Well, I disagree with the very first line because I believe learning a new language is difficult depending on how you see the language you are learning, depending on how determined you are to learn the language, because nothing is really, you can't buy difficult moments when you're learning a new language, but then it's your determination that leads it to, because now we have the internet and everything. So yes, it's somewhat challenging, yes, to learn a new language, but without interest, I keep on saying this, anyone who tells me I want to learn the Korean language, I want to learn the Spanish, can you help me? I always tell the person that if you do not have an interest in the language, if you are learning the language because your friend is learning the language or because you find it fascinating, then you are going to get stuck on the way because you start and then you stop. You need some sort of motivation for you to continue to learn the language you pick up, because sometimes you get stuck on the way. So I agree, disagree. I think I'm taking my words back. I agree. It's sort of frustrating when you're trying to get a grammar structure or like a vocabs right, and then or you're trying to get some spelling right, and then you're basically not getting it right. So it's quite frustrating and challenging, I think, in the sense that you're putting yourself out there to learn. It's not like it's compulsory. You didn't necessarily need to learn that language, but then you are naturally doing it out of your own way. Okay, so it says that figuring out the best way to learn a new language, that seems nearly impossible. Different sign. Okay, blah 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 blah. Maybe you've You are great at conversing in French, but can't write in Spanish to save your life. Well, that happens. I'm great at conversing in Chi, but can't write in Chi to save my life. I mean, I can write in Chi, but then the spellings would be mostly wrong because I wouldn't trust my own spellings. It's like me, it's like a child. Anyway, what are some of the best ways to learn a new language? It says make new friends. Well, I agree with this one. If you make new friends in the language of your choice or the language you want to study in, it makes it quite easier for you to learn the language, especially when this friend we are talking about is also trying to learn your language. So, for instance, I'm trying to learn Korean. If I meet a Korean who is trying to learn Chi, it's quite easier. Or if I meet a Korean who wants to study English because I speak the English language, I basically study the English language like every other Ghanaian. So, language exchange, you can make friends out of that. And then when the person is your friend, you can talk about basically everything and nothing. That is it. You can talk about basically everything and you get to express yourself in the process. Like it's more like you'll be speaking to the friend. It's more let's say for instance I'm going home. I'm speaking to my Korean friend. I have to figure out how to speak to the Korean friend. So I have to learn how to communicate with my Korean friend. And then my Korean friend will have to learn how to communicate with me by using the English language. So we force ourselves. I remember there was this one time I had this conversation with some I used an app, Hello Talk, and then I was trying to speak to this person, a friend, or should I call it a language exchange person? So that person speaks in English, and then I also speak in the desired language I'm trying to study. So we are having a conversation, but in two different languages. That is a very great way. So yes, I agree. Making friends. It's through language learning I've made a lot of friends. If there's a community of people who speak the language you want to learn in your city, attending those events is very, very important. Initially, I thought it wasn't, but then of late, I've been getting myself involved in so many Korean styles that I'm amazed at how important it is for you to get yourself involved in these events. You get to know more people, you share interest with people, and then, yes, great way. It says that you can casually chat with your friends in local. Yes, another way is making friends. Sometimes you don't necessarily need to make new friends. You can use the language on your old friends. It's like me, friends. I would use the Korean a lot because that is a language I'm still studying. Yes, that is like a disclaimer, TMI, whatever you call it. Yes. So it's like I'm having a conversation, or I'm like, let's go home. I can just use Korean on my friends. I'm like Chibika, or like just use the Korean, use the language you are trying to learn on your friends. They wouldn't understand, but then you using the words more often sort of creates a reminder, and then it gets stuck in your memory. So the second way this article says we can learn a language is copy elementary school kids. That is very true. When we were studying the English language, it was naturally something you did from probably nursery or crèche to JHS or SHS, and then you're still using the English language to write exams or whatever it is that you have. And you still converse or have conversations with people using the English language. So you realize that it's something that you do. But how did you start? You started elementary. You started with A, B, C, D. You started so young. So if you're trying to learn a new language, whatever language it is, you shouldn't rise yourself up to the start that, okay, I'm going to read the news in this language, when you literally cannot hold a sentence in the language. You have to start like an elementary school kid, learn all the colors, learn everything you could learn, but then learn things that are related to you, things that would be meaningful first. Things that it's like when you're learning vocabs and then you try to learn something that you wouldn't use in a normal day. There's no way it would stick. Naturally, it's like English. Naturally, you get to know some words, but you don't use them every day. So it's better to learn the words you'd use every day first, so you can hold a conversation. And to do that, elementary school, that's how kids are able to talk and speak English, but then they do not use like complex sentences. So you start from somewhere. You start having the basic conversation, even with yourself. Yes. The third one says watch a movie. Click on John. I agree with this. If you watch a movie, to learn a language is a very great way. But there's a difference between watching a movie to learn a language and then watching a movie to entertain yourself. That's how some people are able to learn a language, or they're able to watch movies for like in a language for so many years and still not speak the language, because their purpose of learning or watching that particular movies was not to study the language. For instance, it's like someone watching Indian movies from childhood and still can't speak Indian, because the purpose of watching the movie was to get entertained, was probably to get an information, was probably to learn something, not to learn the language. So when you're watching a movie to learn a language, there are ways of doing it. You can either switch off the subtitles of the language. You can watch a particular episode 2 or 3 times or 4 or 5 times, where, for instance, let me show you what I do. I watch the very first, if I want to learn with a movie, I watch the very first episode, if it's a series, the first episode with Korean subtitles. So whilst they are talking, I read the subtitles. So you can try doing that. Whilst they are talking, you try to read the subtitles in the language, your desired language. And after you switch off the subtitles and you try to see if you would understand. So after doing that, because the writing can sometimes prompt you that this is this and that is that. After doing that, the next thing you can do is basically switch to English to see if you understood everything. Definitely you're not going to understand everything as a beginner, but you check if you understood everything or most of it. So then the amounts you understood, you yourself, you know if you are improving or not. So learning a language through movies is helpful, but it depends on how you do it. Someone can tell you that I studied English through a series, and then you'll be like, it's a lie. It's not a lie. That person was determined and probably watched one particular series, because one series, let's say a Korean series, is 16 episodes long, and then it entails a lot of things you can learn if you watch that repeatedly and use it to learn. So there are ways of learning a language using movies. You don't necessarily need to watch the movie and think that you're going to anyway, that's it. The next way is to pretend you are at a restaurant. Well, instead of pretending you are at a restaurant, why not go to a restaurant of your desired language? Let's say if you're learning Chinese, there's so many Chinese restaurants. You can just go walk in and then you just try ni hao, and then you just go. I don't know of Chinese restaurants, so I would use Korean. This is not a paid advertisement, it's a free advertisement. So there's Maple Leaves at Achimota if you want to go to a Korean restaurant, if you're studying Korean and then you want to just go and try your Korean in them. Why not Maple Leaves? There's Ninano restaurant. I think I've tried I've tried Ninano restaurant's food. I've not tried Maple restaurants, but then they keep advertising and it's all over my Instagram profile. So it's one of the places one of the places I want to visit, one of the restaurants I want to visit. I want to taste. I took japchae at Ninano restaurant, so I'll try something else at Mapo when I go there, when I get the chance to go there. So when you go there, you can just try to have a natural conversation in the language, like what you would do at a restaurant should you be in that desired country with the language. So it's more like practicing, and then they would understand you. I mean, the customer is always right, so even if they do not understand you, they would have to suck it up with you, and then you'd have to suck it up with yourself, you know. So you can pretend, you can read, or you can be at home, pretend you are, then you read a menu and something and try to translate, or when you see something you try to translate, because there's this joy of seeing this particular language you're studying and then you understand it. I was once in a bus, in a church or bus, and then I saw a Korean car, and then it had the Korean inscriptions. That was when I started studying the language at first. So when it had the inscriptions and everything, I still remember the feeling. I was amazed as to how I could actually read it. I didn't understand what it was by then. I think it was Hembok. or something like that. But I didn't understand it. But just being able to read the letters and the characters, I was like, chuchi. This is great. So you can use that method. They said you can use the internet. Great. This is it. You shouldn't wait to look for a classroom to teach you a language. Now, studying in classroom, I sound like a lecturer. Anyway, I sound like a teacher. Anyway, studying in classrooms or going to schools isn't the only options. If you do not have the means to go to a school to learn a new language, there is a simple way. The internet should be your friend. I don't remember sitting in a classroom studying Korean. We don't even have Korean schools here. I've tried searching up and searching up and searching up. It was this year I realized that there's some mission. Is it mission? Hey, is that a church? There's a church at Medina. How come I've forgotten the name? Anyway, they organize these Korean lessons, but then even with what they are teaching at the moment, I seem to be a little bit ahead. They are teaching the beginning stuff, and then and it was this joyous moment when I realized that I could actually teach in Korean. So yeah, you can use the internet. The internet should be your friend. There are so many apps available now for you to study a new language. You just have to search for the language of your choice. And then if you know you're going to find it difficult, just set alarms. Of course, obviously, you're not going to follow your alarms every now and then. You're going to slack off. There are like months 3 months when I've not even studied anything, and then you'll feel guilty about it if you have an interest, if you have a reason. But one thing, if you're studying a language, you should have an interest. You should have a motivation, like a source of motivation, So use the internet. Now I agree. And then yes, the next one says before that, the research local classes or event boards to find a new educational outlet. Yes, and by the internet there are so many sites. If you want sites concerning Spanish, French, and then Korean to study, I can help with that. Apart from that, I'm not studying any other one. But then you can still contact me. I can try and find some researches. Since I'm into language learning, I know a lot of people who are into language learning, and I can be of help. Who knows? So yes, use the interwebs. I agree with that. But then, I'm sorry to say this, I don't really trust Google Translate. There are some things that I would go in. There are some languages that I could trust Google Translate for. For instance, when I want a Korean translation, I wouldn't go to Google Translate because the translations they'll give me is it's quite probably, if you read, you would understand, but then it doesn't deliver the emotions you may want from the whatever it is you're trying to say. And sometimes you do not learn from the book. So you are trying to say something and you realize that what Google Translate is saying and what you are trying to say doesn't match. So usually I advise whoever wants to study a language to go in for translators that are assigned or designed for the specific language, like English to Spanish dictionary, English to French dictionary. Those are specifically made for that, so it's quite designed. But then if you want a quick tool, Google Translate, fine. For instance, I use Papago for Korean Translate, but I wouldn't go and use Papago for French because it will give me something I wouldn't desire to see. But I can trust Google with French because so far the French translations have been quite expressive, and Spanish. But then I do not use Google Translate that often. I'd rather use resources, dictionaries, and things that would get me the definitions and explanations that I want. So I'm not saying you do not trust Google Translate. I'm saying that it shouldn't be your only source of studies. You should use other resources to be able to gain more knowledge and information. The next one says teach yourself. Basically, the key to this one is small steps to dedicated research. Yes, sometimes too much information itself is an issue. Imagine you want to study a language and then you go on the web and then you're trying to figure out how to study the language, and then you notice that there's so many materials. I'll use the Korean again. There's Talk to Me in Korean. There is howtostudykorean.com. There is 90 Days Korean. There is KoreanClass101.com. There are so many resources. And initially I was using, I think, 90 days Korean, because when you know one and you do not research to figure out the others, you just get stuck. So upon research, I realized that even some universities in South Korea organize classes, online classes, videos and all that for people who are interested in studying the language. It's through research. Spanish, I think I noticed something, I've forgotten about that, but then they were also teaching the language. So I noticed the people are ever willing to study the language. There's this group, Amino, I joined, and I realized that people who know the language are also trying to teach the language. So upon research and then upon trying to teach yourself, you get to have so many resources which would help you to study the language in the long run, you know. The next one is, okay, so under the teach yourself, it says making small goals to attain every day will keep you moving onwards and upwards on the language learning track. I agree with this as well. You know, when people start learning languages, they think it's like a magic show. Immediately they start learning the language, instantly they are going to top or be able to speak the language. It doesn't happen that way. I think I've been studying for Korean for 3 4 years now. 2017, 18, 19, 20. Amula, calculate it yourself. So it doesn't come that easily, that suddenly. And then I've not been consistent. I'm not one consistent person, like to say that, oh, every day May I've been studying the language. Nope. I study, sometimes I go for like unannounced break, and then suddenly I get back, and I'm able to always come back to it because of my interest and desire and like determination. That's why I keep on saying that you should have a motivation for studying the language. I remember going on Spanish break for only God knows how long, only to see a message from Duolingo crying and all that. So, you know, you can use Memrise as well. If you want recommendations, I can give that to you. Okay, the next one says break it down. By break it down, it means lyrics or it's language. Sometimes we get interested or introduced to languages through the music. So this is basically telling us to break the lyrics of the music we find interesting. It's not that you're supposed to dance to the music and all that. You break it down, take the vocabs, take the sentences you think you'd use every day. Is like, what song can I use? Let's say if I hear something like this as a song from day 6, congratulations. So so I've taken that sentence for myself. Now you do not contact me. Like, I translate it as something that I would want to use on my friends. So I've taken that sentence. If I want a phrase out of it, ije is now. So you learn, you take your vocabs, you take your sentences, you take whatever it is you want to take from the song. Alongside the emotions and whatever it is the song comes with. So break it down, I agree. I think I agree with almost everything said here. So nope, why not talk? Nope, we're not talking about dancing here. Sadly, those crazy moves will not likely help you learn a new language. Instead, focus on vocabulary for one area of topic every week. Exactly. So you can pick one song and then you try to break it down. You don't try to do it daily, that on a learn, I'm picking this song, Nail, I'm picking that song, and you're like, no. You pick one song probably for a week. If you are not done breaking it down, you are not moving on, because you're learning something from the song, because you are using the song to learn the language. So you can use that as well. Another one is listening to the radio. Listening to the radio is quite helpful. Every language you want to learn has a radio station. And then thankfully now things are online. We are having this online. So with the online radio, you get to listen to live sessions, not necessarily live, some audiobooks, some shows or whatever it is from your desired language, and you realize that you learn a lot. With the radio, you do not have translation, so you are forced or you are compelled to try and understand the conversation that is going on between either the guest, the host, or the guest and then the listeners. And with that, it's quite helpful, usually, mostly, because you try cracking your brain. And that is when you realize that, really I can understand this. Oh, really, I didn't need a translator. Because if you movies, you have an option of switching on subtitles, but with the radio you have no option of that. You just listen, and then when it's gone, it's gone. That's one thing I like about radio. If it goes, it goes. So yes, so listening to the radio can be one way. Another one says look ridiculous. Like, you need to look ridiculous when you're studying a language. If you think of what others would say to you concerning your new language desire, new language you want to learn, you would never go for it. In this world, no one is really thinking about you. You are the only one thinking about yourself. No one is interested in your life. You are the only one interested in your life. So if you have to look ridiculous for you to study a new language, my dear, look ridiculous. If you have to seem crazy because you're studying a new language, seem crazy. It's going to be difficult to accept at first, but it's better for you to seem crazy and ridiculous and get your desired results instead of being nothing like that and then not getting your desired results. So yes, you have to look ridiculous. You have to get rid of your pride. That, like, when it comes to language, it's a language that is not yours, so you do not know everything. You have to ask questions. I just sounded like my boss. You have to ask questions. You have to ask questions when you do not know. If you have a friend, you can ask. If you have the internet, you can ask. You just have to ask questions when it comes to the language. So yeah. And then go abroad. Tony Simeon. If I had money, I would have already gone. But anyway, if you have the opportunity to go abroad, go abroad. If you have the opportunity to go abroad, go abroad. I'm being serious about it. Because if you go abroad, you would be able to immerse yourself in the country and in the language you want to learn. So basically, that is another way for you to learn. So last minute ways to learn a foreign language. When it all comes down to it, there is an infinite number of ways to learn a foreign language. It's true. Because learning styles vary from every individual. Movies may help for you, it may not help for another person. How do I put it? Lyrics may help for you, may not help for another person. So it depends on the individual and how it is. But an advice I would want to give to any language learner is be patient with yourself. We usually put ourselves on a ladder that we think that by a year we should have been able to finish this, by a year we should have done. Be patient with yourself. You get amazed as to how much you know. Like, just knowing I am, je suis, just knowing that it's okay. Je suis, je ne, gosh, my French is stuck. Anyway, just know, like I'm saying, just knowing je suis. Oh wait, how do we introduce? Je m'appelle Dorcas. And then I was about to mention my age. Anyway, but just knowing how to introduce yourself, the little bit. I was about to say, I'm mixing the languages. The head of a bite. Yes, so Oriachun, Wichun, just knowing left, right, the basic things. Like, I mean, knowing A in another language you're trying to learn is okay. Like, don't beat yourself up. Be patient with yourself. And then you have to commit to speaking in the target language. Like, if you meet someone and the person is not studying the language, who cares? Just speak it with the person anyway and translate it. It helps your brain. It helps you yourself study the language. So commit yourself to speaking the language, because if you are in a surrounding where the language is not spoken, like me learning Korean in Ghana, where Korean is not even closer to being a language spoken, like, how would I communicate with people who do not understand the language? And then they'll be like, what? I'm like, what? Okay, this is what I meant. It sometimes forces them to know the basic things like pegopa, I'm hungry. My family may not know how to pronounce it, but then they know it when I say that I'm hungry in Korean, because it's something that I've repeated. So yes, commit to speaking in the target language. And then make friends with native speakers. That one I agree. Native speakers really help you and then correct your pronunciations. Like, the internet may be helpful, but then getting the accent or the intonation may be quite different. Like, probably listening to movies and all that can help. But having a native speaker correct your pronunciation. It's very, very good. It's like it's because we had native speakers when in studying French. That's how most of us may sound like we understand French and all that. No, we had native speakers to correct us. So yes, you can also join language programs or whatever it is. So there are so many ways, there are so many sites. You can learn Chinese, you can learn Spanish, French, Arabic, Portuguese, English, whatever it is you want to learn. I want to tell you that you will be able to learn it depending on your motivation and then your interest and whatever it is that you want to study. Ken, for the first segment. So for the second segment, I got some questions on language and why I'm interested in languages. That is the very first question. Why am I interested in languages? I don't know why I'm interested in languages. It basically started without even me realizing that I'm interested in languages. Because it started with Espanol, with French. With French, actually, when I was in JHS, people didn't like it, but then I wanted to be in the class. I wanted to show off, passing the French exams and all. I never saw it as something that I was interested in. I wanted to do it in SHS, but then I couldn't because of the courses I chose. And then I regretted not doing it in SHS. But then after being able to realize I can study things online, I felt and told myself that I could learn. The difference is when I got an opportunity. Wait, why am I telling this story? Why am I interested in languages? Okay, I don't know why I'm interested in languages. Okay, I don't know why I'm interested in languages. Why? Well, not or talking. The next question says, when did I start? When did I start learning languages? I started studying Korean in 2017. I started studying Spanish in I think 2012. But the thing is, with the Spanish, like I say, I still have the interest. I still study, but the way I study is not beneficial to anyone. I study it like occasionally, once in a while, and it's not that I can speak. I can't speak, but then I can understand an amount of it. But if I'm supposed to choose between the two languages, I think I understand more Korean than Spanish. Maybe because I continue to watch a lot of Korean series and try to listen to a lot of K-pop. And then with the Spanish, I only listen to the music. I don't really watch a lot of Spanish movies. But then those are just excuses. Don't give yourself excuses when it comes to learning languages. Anyway, that's it. I've been talking a lot for today. That's it for language learning. That is it. Those are some of the ways you can learn or study a new language. These are some of the steps from the articles that we got. And this brings us to the end of our second segment and the last segment of Tell Me About It, the 33rd episode. You can reach us on all social media handles at PenyGh on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. You can as well sponsor us by reaching us through all those media platforms. You can reach us on radio.penygh.com as well. And then Penny Radio is the hope for the hopeless. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's episode of TMAI. I am your host, ACK. Onalan Yogikaji Hamsamida. Thank you. Adios.